Gracias por estar presentes acá. Bienvenidos a este conversatorio Cómo construyó China el nuevo normal de la gestión humana post-COVID-19 con Clement Lo, a quien voy a presentar a continuación. Clement Lo es de la compañía consultora Gemini, ubicada en Hong Kong. Es un gusto muy grande para Vázquez Kennedy tenerlos a todos ustedes reunidos con Clement el día de hoy. Clement es socio y gerente senior de consultoría en recursos humanos de la compañía Gemini, ubicada en Hong Kong, donde está su sede central. Es una compañía muy conocida en el Asia, tiene presencia además en Singapur, en Tailandia, en Vietnam y en 4 grandes ciudades de la China. Gemini, como compañía consultora, es miembro de Career Star Group, CSG. Career Star Group es la red de empresas de outplacement más grande del mundo, de la cual es miembro también Vázquez Kennedy. Clement Lo es reconocido en Asia como un experto en desarrollo profesional en general y en particular en outplacement. Una vez más le damos agradecimientos muy sinceros a Clement por su generosidad al compartir con nosotros su tiempo y su experiencia y que haya decidido iniciar el día con nosotros, porque es que ahorita son las 7:15 de la mañana en Hong Kong, de mañana viernes 12 de junio. Y ojalá Clement esté acompañado por una taza de buen café, que ojalá sea café colombiano. Yo ahí, antes de darle la palabra a Clement, déjenme revisar con ustedes por qué sin duda para tantos fue tan interesante la oportunidad de escuchar lo que Clement tiene por decirnos respecto a esta nueva situación de la gestión humana en la China. Y es porque, como ahorita vamos a ver, la China nos lleva 3 meses de ventaja en el manejo de esta nueva situación mundial. ¿Y por qué 3 meses? Hay muchas similitudes y hay muchas diferencias en la experiencia vivida por los dos países frente al COVID-19. Y los dos países son países muy diferentes. China tiene prácticamente 1.400 millones de habitantes, Colombia 50 millones, China es 28 veces más grande que Colombia en número de habitantes, siendo Colombia un país grande en el mundo, es el tercero en población en América Latina, que eso es mucho decir después de Brasil y de México. En la China ha habido en números redondos un total de 84.000 casos de diagnóstico de COVID confirmado, lo cual hace que sea una tasa de contaminación de 6 personas por cada 100.000 habitantes. Entonces miremos lo primero, y es que en Colombia la tasa de contaminación ha sido de 9 por cada 10.000 habitantes, la China 6 por cada 100.000. Un porcentaje de contaminación mucho más bajo en comparación con el total de habitantes. Con mayor letalidad en la China, el total de muertes allá de 4.600 y tantas equivale al 5.5% de personas contaminadas, y la tasa en Colombia es de 3.29%. Frente a las personas contaminadas es bastante más baja, pero con una contaminación mucho más alta. Y el inicio del confinamiento en China se marca con una fecha de enero 23. El país es tan grande y suceden tantas cosas tan diferentes a lo largo y ancho de esa geografía que pues es muy difícil precisar como un hecho único a nivel nacional en la China, pero digamos en Google, por decirlo así, se considera una fecha oficial enero 23 del inicio del confinamiento y una fecha de finalización del confinamiento de abril 8, que son 2 meses y medio. Eso es menos que el tiempo que lleva Colombia en confinamiento. Nosotros estamos cumpliendo 11, 12 semanas en esta semana. Lo que se estima y lo último que mencionó el ministro de Salud directamente el día de hoy precisamente es que se espera que el confinamiento termine cuando hayan transcurrido 3 meses y medio. Entonces, el confinamiento en Colombia más largo, el confinamiento en Colombia menos letal. El confinamiento en Colombia con un nivel de contaminación mayor frente al total de habitantes. Y es como el precio que se paga de haber logrado alargar el pico. Entonces hay un confinamiento mayor con las consecuencias económicas que tiene, hay un nivel de contaminación mayor y hay un nivel de letalidad menor. Y podemos decir que si el confinamiento terminó en abril 8 en la China, digamos que vamos a completar nosotros 3 meses. El cierre de nuestro confinamiento será 3 meses después de haber terminado en la China. Entonces, el país de Clement, digamos que tiene 3 meses de ventaja de enseñarnos sus experiencias, y Clement, con esa biografía que acabo de comentarles, de esa biografía que acabo de comentarles de experto en gestión humana, pues nos va a compartir desde su perspectiva qué es aquello que ha venido ocurriendo allá. Y para finalizar, Clement dará una presentación más bien corta. Toda la audiencia le pedimos que hagan todas sus preguntas, las vayan haciendo a medida que va haciendo su presentación Clement. Escríbanlas allá abajo en la opción que hay de preguntas y respuestas, aunque si quieren hacerla allí en la opción de chatear, por ambas la pueden hacer. Hay miembros del equipo de Vázquez Kennedy, están recogiendo todas las preguntas y están agrupando las que son similares. Trataremos de que Clement tenga todo el espacio para responderlas todas, pero si alguno siente que no le respondieron su pregunta, probablemente es que fue agrupada con otras similares para cubrir con cada pregunta un solo tema a la vez. Y creo que no tengo nada más para decir, aparte de que espero que disfruten mucho esta charla, que tengan muchas preguntas, que sigan adelante. Pueden escoger, por si hay alguna duda, está la opción abajo de escoger el idioma en que se quiere oír. Los que quieran oír directamente en inglés a Clement su presentación lo pueden hacer cogiendo inglés. Los que quieran oír al intérprete, entonces escojan español. Muchas gracias, Clement. Te cedo el micrófono. Bienvenido y bienvenidos a unos asistentes que están en otras partes del mundo, miembros de la red CSG, que nos dan el gusto y el honor de estarnos también acompañando hoy acá. Clement, estamos en tus manos, adelante.
Thank you so much, Camilo. So before I start, let me try this. Hola, soy Clemente, mucho gusto. Does that make any sense to you all? That's all the Spanish that I know. Right. So I'm Clement, and yeah, I represent my company Gemini in Hong Kong, which Camilo just introduced us, and that's a very complete introduction. So I'm here today to talk about how not just China but Asia in a whole, how we battled COVID-19. And so I'm currently in Hong Kong in my tiny little apartment here in Hong Kong. So before I start, I would like to just try to give everyone a little geographical lesson that so Hong Kong is part of China, but we sort of have a different system than China. So for me, I'm in Hong Kong, and I oversee the HR consulting division of Gemini in Hong Kong, but also in China, in Singapore, and Thailand. In Hong Kong, we sort of have a different system. We have our own currency, we have our own borders, we have our own jurisdiction, and so yeah, how we label ourselves is more like the financial center of Asia. So it's very much like London or New York. So the market will be very different. So hopefully I can give you more dimensions, more angles on how we as Asians deal with COVID-19. All right, so before I start, I will try to share my screen. All right, here we go. So so I'm not going, I won't go through all the Gemini details again, but just one quick thing to add is we started as a recruitment agency, and we still are one of the well-known recruitment agency in Asia. So we have a good number of people working on placing jobs, but myself and my department is called Gemini Development, which focus on other HR services. So, for example, outplacement, training, different development programs, coaching as well, and a lot of team building activities that we do. So we're very diversified in terms of the services that we provide normally. But apart from that, I won't go into too much details because Camilo just did a really great job in introducing us already. So yeah, like I said, we have presence in all over Asia: Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, and 4 cities in China. So hopefully I can give you guys some insight on of Asia today. So just a quick history lesson before I dig into all these. I think one of the main reasons why Hong Kong or even China we dealt with the COVID-19 situation quite well is I'm not sure if a lot of you heard about SARS in 2003. That was about 17 years ago. So that was really the first time in the recent history that we battled a pandemic in a public pandemic. And I think that's a major reason why in Asia, in Hong Kong especially, that we handled the situation pretty well, I would say. So just going back to 2003, that was my first time in my life that I have to wear a mask every day. So that was the year when I have my public examination. So I still got the feeling that wearing mask and going to an exam, that's such a bad idea, and I don't want to do it again. But that was the first time for everyone in Hong Kong wearing masks every day, and that was the first time we keep sanitizing our hands, and first time we implemented social distancing. So we've been through this all over 17 years ago, and that's, I think, one of the major reasons why we handle this very well. So a little time frame, the timing of the outbreak. So it first started in China. Officially, that was in January, late January, but there's also a lot of evidence dating back to last November, in November 2019, that China started the little mini outbreak of the coronavirus, or the COVID-19, of which everyone called. So Hong Kong followed a bit later. That our first cases was until like late January, early February. And we are currently doing fairly okay, just perhaps 1 or 2 cases. We have about 1,100 cases, and I think 80% of them are imported cases that people came back from the States, from UK, from other parts of the world that brought back the virus instead of a lot of local transmission. Instead, Singapore, there is a lot of local transmission in terms of the COVID-19 because there's a lot of foreign workers in Singapore that the transmission went really fast, and it spread out in a matter of days. So as you can see in the Singapore chart, that you can see the numbers keep growing in April, May, and they still record about 300, 400 cases per day nowadays. So things in Singapore isn't going very well still. Whereas in Thailand, things been quite intense in April and May, and nowadays there's more gradual, going gradually well in Thailand as well. So these are like the overview of what happened in the Gemini countries, or in general in Asia. So that's pretty much the picture, right? So just let me try to give you some examples of how bad our economy was affected by the COVID-19. So for example, in Hong Kong, we had the the numbers in orange are the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate was at 3.3% back in January this year. And in 2 months, and in 5 months' time, it rises from 3.3% to 5.2%. So that's a huge rise. And we recorded a minus 8.9% of GDP dropped in the first quarter this year. So, and we're expecting it to go further down. So that is a big problem, because Hong Kong has been one of the most mature market in the world. So say, for example, China, unemployment rate rose from 5.1% to 6.2%, and the GDP drop was, for the first quarter of the year, it was minus 6.8%. And China has been one of the fastest growing country in the world for the last 20 years. And on average, they have a growth rate of annual growth rate of about 8% to about 7-8% over the last 10 years. So they have been growing really, really fast. But so this is actually a very big hit to the economy, from plus 8%, 7% to minus 6.8% or even more. Is a huge drop in terms of the productivity that China is generating. So COVID, apparently, it's a very, very big problem for China. Singapore, they're still doing fairly well in terms of employment. It's only 2.4%. And like other countries, the GDP dropped as well. For Thailand, they have the official number of unemployment rate at 1.1%, but the way they consider people unemployed is sort of funny. So I wouldn't take that number very seriously. But like any other countries, they also suffered from COVID. Right. So what industries in Asia that have been impacted most? That first of all, I must say it has to be travel related industry. Say, for example, this is the Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong, one of the oldest and most beautiful hotel in the world, I would say. So this is, and then tourism. The tourism industry in Hong Kong is one of the 3 pillars that supported the Hong Kong economy. So if tourism or travel is severely impacted, then that's a big problem in Hong Kong, and even in Thailand, say, for example, that's a big problem. Retail, luxury products, luxury goods, luxury brands, severely impacted. I'm not sure if any one of you read about the news that our own aviation brand, Cathay Pacific, was really, really struggling over the last 6 months, and the government recently injected money into them just in try to save them. There are a lot of heavy industries in Singapore, so in Singapore and Thailand. So these industries also been hit very hard in Singapore and Thailand. So, for example, oil manufacturing and reproducing oil-related products, say, such as plastics and everything else. The one at the bottom was, manufacturing in China. So a lot of factories, a lot of different produce going on in China. A lot of they've stopped for 2-3 months in February to April. So things are gradually returning to normal, but during that 3 months, we are literally producing nothing. And like a lot of people say, China is the world factory, right? So if China isn't producing, then a lot of companies, a lot of different organizations, a lot of different brands will struggle because they don't receive any products and don't have anything to sell to their customers. And lastly, this is one of the restaurants in Hong Kong. So the F&B industries, I mean, globally, worldwide, have been hit really, really hard because no people are going out for dinner, no people are going out for anything. So yeah, F&B is one of the most industry that has been hit the hardest, I would say. And like I said, so just a quick wrap up is the hotels, tourism, hospitality, tourism, a lot of retails and luxury products, aviation, so all the flights, the airlines. My wife herself is a flight attendant in Hong Kong, so our family is one of the impact families in Hong Kong that she didn't work for nearly 4 months now. So things been going not very well here. And there's in Singapore and Thailand all the heavy industries that they do, especially with oil, manufacturing, and a lot of logistics purchasing in China. And last but not least, food and beverages all over the world. So these, I would say these are the industries that have been impacted most by COVID-19, but also other industries, for example, education, which is a huge industry in Hong Kong, has also been severely affected. So, yeah. And so what have we done? What have we done to battle COVID-19? Like I said at the beginning, we are used to this sort of pandemic because we have experienced that 17 years ago during SARS. So in Hong Kong, once there's an outbreak in China, we reacted immediately. That's way before WHO, the World Health Organization, tells people to start wearing masks or keep your social distance. We started doing that much earlier. So even in early January, when there isn't really a huge outbreak in China, we started wearing masks and goggles and even like protective suits everywhere on street. So I've been wearing masks to work for nearly 4 months now, and it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to do. But I think one of the reasons why Hong Kong did fairly well compared to the rest of the world is we have the experience and we really didn't trust WHO. We took matter in our own hands. We decided what is the best for society, for the people as a whole, and we did all the measures that we could do. So nowadays, there's still 99% of the population wear masks when we go out. And for 3 months, there's literally no people on the streets after work, and no people going out for dinner. The government actually didn't implement any sort of strict regulations on limiting people's movement, but we actually did it on our own because we think this is the most effective way of battling COVID-19. So that's for Hong Kong. For Singapore and China, so for Hong Kong, we didn't even have like instructions from the government to work from home. So for example, myself, I still go to the office every day for the last 3-4 months. So there's not a single day that I stayed at home for work. I still go to work every day. I still go out dinner every day, but with a lot of protection. So situation in Singapore and China is a little bit different. So they shut the borders very quickly after the outbreak. And most of the people work from home, or the factories are all shut down because of the virus. And in China, I would say they have limited people's movement. So because all the Chinese people, they use a social app called WeChat. And basically, WeChat can do everything so there's a payment platform, it's a social media, it's everything. And the government use WeChat to track people when they're on the street. And if there are more people on the street, and then they send a message to them to order them to go back home. So that's a really, really effective way to limit people's movement and to make sure everyone stays home. Whereas in Singapore, things are fairly similar, that most of the people over the last 3 months just stay home because of government orders. So on the top right corner, you can see this is what actually happens every day in China, that people doesn't even have to go to supermarkets or to buy their groceries, because the delivery people do all the work. So all they have to do is stay home and order online. And then the delivery companies will deliver everything to their doors through a central system. So that also have a tremendous, a very effective in battling and make sure people stay home, is that they don't even have to go out to buy food or other products. That is a really, really good way of doing so. So in terms of the government, in terms of how did the government help the corporates, the companies, but also helping the people, is so first of all, say for example in Hong Kong, they injected cash, but yeah, a huge amount of cash into an aviation company to make sure it doesn't go bankrupt, and to make sure it keeps running for another year or so. So that's a direct government interference, or direct government taking care of the situation in that sense. In Singapore, actually in Hong Kong, Singapore, and literally all the countries, there's a salary subsidy. So the governments are using the reserves to subsidize the companies to help them to pay the salaries. So just to keep it moving, to keep companies running and prevent them from shutting down. In Singapore especially, they have to guarantee that they are not going to make people redundant. In doing so, the government will provide huge funding. So the one thing that they couldn't do is fire people. So that is a really, really good way of just to maintain the business going. But we're expecting that there will be some closing down once the funding is gone. So once the funding is, because there will be a limit of the funding, and once the funding is stopped, then we do expect some companies to go bankrupt or to close down, but that will be later of the year. I would expect, like all the governments do in the world, is tax relief. So a portion of the tax will go back to the corporates, just to give a little help and make sure they don't pay that much tax next year and this year and next year. So that will have a bad impact on the government's finance as well. So that is something we have to be careful of next year, because next year most governments in the world, they will have a much less revenue, and how they are gonna spend the money will be one of the main issues next year. But first, we have to focus on this year and how are we going to deal with the problem. Like rental waivers is like there's also other measures that help the companies recover from COVID-19. So say, for example, rental waivers is one of the main way of doing so. So I'll move on to the next topic is when we talk about crisis, and in Cantonese in Hong Kong, there's a sentence called when there are crisis, or where there is crisis, there's always opportunity. So crisis, in a way, it represents opportunity. And so there are industries, there are companies that benefit so much in this COVID-19, and that is where we as HR people or businessmen, we can start focusing, or we should have started focusing on these industries or these companies. Say, for example, all the delivery apps, all the delivery companies, they have been benefiting from the COVID situation immensely over the last 6 months. Say Uber Eats, Deliveroo, these are the more global brand, but there are also a lot of local brands that benefited as well. Amazon, and as another example, that is one of the biggest companies in the world, but they are focusing on e-commerce, and that is they are still doing fairly well. So say, for example, in China, we have represents from Meituan. So they are a huge, one of the mega companies in China that offers delivery services. And Alibaba, I'm not sure if like many of you, if many of you have heard of Alibaba. So there's one of the biggest e-commerce company in China. So it's equivalent to the Chinese Amazon. Yeah, so they have benefited as well. And of course, there are the entertainment industries, especially Netflix, that did so well over the last 6 months. And of course, we're here in Zoom, and this is with this COVID-19 that literally everyone in the world knows about Zoom nowadays. So yeah. Oops. So there's the fintech, also the fintech companies. So all the companies that do finance online, IT related. So these are the companies that is less affected by COVID as well. And I'm not sure why my picture isn't showing. Yeah, but the last but not least is the automation industry. So I think with the COVID situation, they will speed up the process of automation or automation in manufacturing even more over the next 2, 3, 4 years. So more companies will look to automate their productions in factories or in other locations. That is going to happen really, really fast over the next 2, 3 years. So that's something we should be aware of. And there's something that if we're going to invest, we're going to look for opportunities, that's where we're going to go. So yeah, like I said, so we are in general in the world, there's a trend of moving from actual to virtual. So actual is what you see, what you touch, and virtual is basically what you see through a screen on your computer, on your iPad. So the next questions that will bring us to thoughts is whether this is sustainable. So everyone uses Zoom nowadays, but is this sustainable for the next 5, 10 years? Is this the new normal? Will this be the new normal? This is something we really, really need to think about instead of all rushing to Zoom, all rushing to Netflix, but is this we have to make sure this is a market, this is a service, a product that is sustainable for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and they keep evolving as well. So this will be a huge issue over the next 2-3 years, where everyone's sort of going back to their normal life. So just a quick some data on the impact on us, on Gemini. So when you think COVID have a huge impact on, say, HR, on human resources, or on our business, I think we reacted really, really fast. Say, we started doing virtual job search workshops for our candidates. We have virtual job search seminars. Recruitment days as well. So we've been doing a lot of things virtually over the last 3-4 months at the beginning of the outbreak. So that is something we tried to react to the situation. And it's actually, what I found out is actually a really, really good timing for direct marketing. The reason behind that is normally when we call HR people, they don't really have the time to entertain us, to talk to us for, say, 5 minutes, because they were so busy before. But nowadays, because they're stuck at home, because they don't really have any projects to work on at the moment, they actually have the time. They have the time to understand what we do, understand what our service is about. And actually, I think it's a good timing to call your clients, to call your suppliers directly and talk about, to see if there's any opportunities. So that's a good findings, I would say. And we've not started, but we have done even more LinkedIn promotion, and because everyone, all they do is sitting in front of a computer, and we have upped that as well. And we took the time to re-educate our consultants internally in Gemini to make sure everyone knows what we offer as a development, as a HR consulting brand, and make sure all the recruitment agencies, or all the recruitment agents of Gemini, they can sell. When they talk to their clients, they can sell our products as well. So these are the changes that we have made in Gemini over the last 4 or 5 months. And the results, I think, is very, very encouraging in terms of there's a significant increase in outplacement inquiries, in employee well-being, and in employee engagement. So HR people will call and say, hey, we're dealing with the situation, but we also worry about the well-being of our employee. What can we do? How can we help our employee? How can we make sure they stay with us? And how can we make sure they're engaged and focused at work? We receive a lot of questions or inquiries from our client and from a lot of different HR people over the last few months. And like I said, so our business has grown as well in terms of Gemini development. So the consulting side of Gemini, we have done much better over the last 6 months, actually. And surprisingly, we received a lot more internal referrals from our consultants as well. So this is when they have time to talk about other things, because no one is doing recruitment anymore because there's no openings. So they actually take the time to sell consulting services to their clients, and a lot of people actually are interested talking to me, just to ask about what sort of services that we can offer. Thirdly is there's actually quite interesting that there's a lot of companies in Asia, especially in Hong Kong, they use a lot of budget every year for travel. they take the teams to other countries, say Japan to Korea, and to spend a couple of days there together as a group. Because they cannot travel this year, so they actually have the budget to spend on something else. So this is how we approach some companies that, hey, I heard you have, say, 20,000 USD to spend on something else because you cannot go to a trip anymore this year. So we help them to do some alternative, like a different team building activities. Instead of going for a trip, can we do some activities together or spend a night together in a good restaurant or something? And how to help them to really bond as a team instead of just going for a trip. And some company use that money to doing like salary benchmark or other HR related services. So this is actually a good opportunity for us because they have the budget who supposed to use for traveling or other purposes this year.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is just to point something because maybe the audience wants to know many things related to the human resources management and the changes in human resources management in your marketplace. You have told us some experiences about your company, but since the audience here are especially human resources managers or professionals in human resources professionals, my question was this: did you see that maybe the human resources people in the companies have a new approach, have a new focus right now because of the changes, because of the crisis, and maybe there are new learnings about things that have changed in the relationships between companies and workers? Can you tell us something about that human resources management? What kind of changes can you see that have came to the field? And
yeah, sure.
maybe will be permanent changes. Can you tell us something about that?
Okay, yes. I think the most significant change in terms of human resources is instead of focusing on career development or how to advance in their career ladder, people are talking about job security. How can I keep my job? How can I try to be less affected by the COVID situation? So this is people's main concern for the employees and for the employers or for the HR people. Like I said at the earlier pages, that the main focus shift to instead of development to more on employee well-being, on the inclusiveness and the inclusive of the employee, diversity of the employee. So they have a lot of inquiries or a lot of questions on the mindfulness of the employee as well. And I think it will be one of the major topics over the next few years in terms of human resources, is the mindfulness of the employees. So this is an interesting thing. I mean, especially in Asia, where people have to work extensive hours every day. So say, for example, in Hong Kong, the average working hours in Hong Kong is about 11 hours a day for people, for a normal white collar people. So that will be one of the things that people will talk about over the next few years, is the mindfulness and the well-being of employees. But in terms of the relationship between employees and the employers, I think, especially in Hong Kong, I don't see there will be a permanent change, because this is unlike the financial crisis back in 2008. This is more like a pause for the entire world. So everything stopped for about 6 months everywhere. everything stopped. But then after 6 months, where the COVID is more, we handle the COVID situation much better, I do think everything will go back to normal. Perhaps we can talk about the new normal in everywhere in the world, but in Asia, I don't think that will have a huge impact. I think because there's also due to the geographical issues or the limitations, especially in Hong Kong and in Singapore, which we are a tiny city, so we don't really have the condition for people to work from home every day, to work remotely from the team. So everyone, they wanted to go back to the company. Everyone, they wanted to talk to other people face to face, because we don't really have the space. We don't really have the space to work alone. So actually, from my experience, about 70-80% of people prefer to work in the company, in the office, because they can interact directly, and because we don't have to trapped in one of our tiny apartments at home. And that's the reason why I don't think there will be a new normal in Asia. Okay. Things will be different in the States or in Europe, where people live much further away from the city and they have to take care of the kids by themselves. And then the new normal might apply, that people will work from home, the people will work more flexible hours. But in Asia, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I see that there are some questions from the audience, and there is one interesting here. Mauricio Villegas from the audience says, what are those what are the new main needs in terms of human skills because of COVID? Maybe despite there will not be in Asia a new normal, maybe there are some new skills that now could be more important than in the past because of COVID. What do you think about that?
Okay, I think it will be the adaptability of people. So how well can you adapt as an employee? How flexible are you? And in terms of, it's not just the COVID as, say, one of the problems or one of the challenges of a company. There will be more challenges coming through. And how, in general, as a company, as an organization, how flexible you can be, how quick you react to the change, how quick you react to the environment, to society, will be one of the main issues. How well you can evolve as a department, as a group, or as a company, that you don't just react to the situation, but the way you can innovate new ideas, new products, and adapt to the market. That will be one of the main issues. So we are seeing a lot of questions asked by HR people in Hong Kong, especially, that what do you do when there's a crisis, when there is a problem? Not just how you react, but you have to take one step further. That what do you think that can improve the situation? Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting example of the focus of the HR or in general in the future.
Mm-hmm. There is another, excuse me.
Yes.
There is another question here. 1 second, please.
Yeah, I'll try to answer in a more in more like an Asia perspective, because I'm located in Hong Kong, which I think is very different from even in China. It's like a completely two different systems. But also in Singapore, there's something that's different as well. So I'll try to put together an answer that is more representing Asia as a whole, but it will be quite Hong Kong focused for now. Yes.
Okay. It's good. There is one question from Jimena Gonzalez. She says, what has been the role of the government in Hong Kong and if the government has some special strategies facing the job crisis. What has the government done for that?
Okay, so the Hong Kong government, I think the major policies that the Hong Kong government tried to tackle this is to subsidize companies. So in Hong Kong, they tried to help to pay the wages of the employees. So they pay directly to the companies to help pay up to 800 USD per month for each employer. For each employee. So if you have, say, 10 employees in your company, you get 9,000 USD per month as a subsidy from the government. And this policy will last for a minimum 6 months. But in return, in Hong Kong, if you want to receive such subsidy, you have to guarantee you're not gonna have a redundancy within the company. So you have to make sure that you keep everyone at work in order to receive the funding from the government. But there's one interesting observation in Hong Kong is that although there are government fundings, but actually all the companies that apply for the funding are like the SMEs, or we call the small and the medium enterprise. Actually, there are a lot of huge enterprises in Hong Kong that they decided against receiving funding because they want to keep the flexibility over the next 6 months. So instead of getting some cash from the government, they rather not getting the cash, but keeping the flexibility of they can still do a major restructuring or major redundancy this year if they have to do so. And I think it's it's really, really interesting to point out that in Hong Kong, it's so easy to fire people. There is literally no employee protection at all. So even if we're on a full-time contract, it's on a permanent contract, all we have to do is to give a 1 month notice to fire someone. There's no labor unions. There's no legal protection whatsoever. It's so easy to fire people. That's one of the bad things, or one of the things that a free market will have on the labor market. A free market is that you're so easy to hire someone, but it's also fairly pro-employer, in a sense that they are so easy to let go of people without any consequences. So in Hong Kong, it's sort of flexible, but say, for example, in China, in Singapore, the protection of the employees are much, much bigger, and it's much more difficult for companies to let people go. Yeah. Well, so yeah, going back to my presentation, and the last bit I want to talk about is the takeaway from the virus. So what we have learned from the virus. And I think, like I said at the beginning, learning from experience, learning from history is so important during this crisis, that we take matter in our own hands, right? So it is also, what everyone else in the world experiencing right now, we experienced that 17 years ago. That's why we are able to react much faster. While everyone is still wondering, everyone's still taking it very lightly, that we took it really, really seriously from the beginning. So before the 4 takeaways I'm going to mention is that we really have to learn from history. And when there is a next pandemic coming, I don't know, in 5, 10, 15 years, we learn from that and we take it seriously from the beginning, and take all the measures, all the precautionary measures that's possible to stop it from spreading, because we can see how bad or how much impact the virus can do to the world and to all the economies around the world. There's one pandemic, there's one virus, and it caused a pause for the global economy for 6 months. So that is a huge impact, and we have to avoid that. So learn from mistakes, learn from experience, learn from the past. It's very important. Secondly, I have 4 takeaways or 4 keywords here that we'll try to focus because of COVID. So first of all is resilience. So make sure that don't give up. Don't give up. I think one of the major, the essence of Hong Kong people especially is the tenacity, how tenacious Hong Kong people are. We're really, really well known for our tenacity in Hong Kong. It's part of our DNA. So if there's a crisis, stop moaning, stop worrying about what's going to happen. Try not to give up and really preserve your energy. Preserve your energy that there will be one day that everything will be better. And we have to take that opportunity, grab our chance to bounce back from the situation instead of just thinking of all the negativities, all the bad things that the COVID-19 brought us. Preserve your energy, focus on the future, think of different plans, think of how we can bounce back. That is so important, I think, even especially during a difficult time like this. Secondly is adaptability. In terms of, I think I can give a good example of adaptability in Hong Kong, especially, is we have, because we have a lot of well-known restaurants. So beforehand, I mean, takeaways is something that is only provided, say, by the restaurants in the neighborhood, right? But the best way to adapt to a situation, because no one is going out for dinner, is nowadays even the Michelin stars restaurants, a Michelin 2 stars, 3 stars restaurants, they started to provide takeaway services. So we are demonstrating the adaptability, how well people react to the situation, is that even a Michelin 3-star restaurant, they started to provide different takeaway packages, different takeaway options for people to try their cuisines, and really expanded the network. Instead of just serving the rich people, they start reaching out to the mid-levels or to the people that used to be interested in their services. So when things don't go in your way, do something else. Think of something else. It might not work. It might not work in the beginning, but then if you try that 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, eventually you'll find a way out. So that's my second point, is called adaptability. Third point is innovation. I think during crisis is a good time to innovate, because your opportunity cost is so low that even if you fail, even if that doesn't work in the first time, think of something else and try that. The rent is fairly affordable nowadays, so you don't have to pay a lot of rent, you don't have to pay a lot of manpower. The salary nowadays is more affordable because more people will be looking for jobs, and there'll be a lot of talent available in the market. So it's a good time to gather a group and try to come up with something new. That's what I call innovation in literally everywhere in the world. My last point will be diversification, and I talked about that in the CSG call as well before. So diversification in terms of not just your products. I mean, diversifying your products are great, selling different things that will share the burden of risk, of course, but also in terms of purchasing, in terms of purchasing and logistics, the way that you can spread the risk. To spread risk, instead of over-relying on 1 or 2 certain countries, why don't you purchase all around the world? So if there's one part of the world that is in trouble, you can still make sure that you have supplies from other countries or other parts of the world that can maintain your business. So perhaps I think diversification or decentralization in a way will be one of the main topics or main issues in the world. There will be a lot of relocation of production lines in the world going on over the next 2-3 years, because people start to realize that they cannot put everything they produce in Asia or in South America. They have to find different options in terms of another outbreak, in terms of another challenge arise, and then they can react well to that. So diversification, innovation, adaptability, and resilience are the 4 major takeaways. But the most important thing, I have to say again, is learn from history, learn from the mistakes. So this brings me to my last part of the presentation. So these are the contents that I've prepared, and now I'm ready for the questions of the audiences. So any questions?
Thank you very much, Clement. Maybe there will be a lot of questions, but we're going to ask only one because of time.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to work, and maybe we have to go for dinner. And, and there is one question. Okay, there was a question that this is the question. You say it's 6 months to stop. Which HR issues are temporary and which will change forever? Great question.
Temporary, I think one of the main issues, I think the most direct impact will be the ways of hiring. Because we have, from our experience, that companies don't do permanent hirings when they start to recover from a crisis. So what they do is they will start hiring temporary workers or contract workers, because they simply doesn't have the resources, they doesn't have the headcounts for the opening. So I think that the temporary issues will be how flexible is your workforce over the next 6 months? That can you, while try to increase your productivity, but also in a way that it doesn't really affect your long-term financial position. So that would be one of the temporary issues. Like I said, there will be a lot more focusing on retention and engagement of employees over the next 6 months or to 1 year. In terms of the long run situation, especially I think in Europe and in America, is that people will be talking about new normal very, very often, I would say. And when we talk about new normal, part of new normal will be working from home. Working from home will be a big issue when we're going forward in the economy. And the one thing we have to make sure is your operating procedure every day in terms of communication, in terms of what people are responsible for. Normally that works in the company or in an actual office that has to align with the new normal, that when people working from home, they can still follow those set of instructions. So perhaps it's a good time for HR people really to take a look of their operations menu, of their operation procedures over the next month or so, and make sure that aligns in the future when people work from home, when people work somewhere else in the world instead of all coming into an office. So that's something I think will be something we need to be aware of.
Let me ask you something. What are the leadership new challenges? How the leaders will have to handle motivation and productivity strategies? What are the new challenges for leaders?
Well, the leaders will have a huge challenge, I think, over the next year or so. One of the major things, I think, will be about how to measure the production of the employees. Say, for example, what is the marketing director gonna do this year's performance appraisal, because how can you measure a productivity of the marketing executive when there isn't any marketing activities at all? So yeah, because there's no money to spend simply, and if there's no money to spend, the marketing people, they're not going to produce anything that is that can be measured in any way for the leaders to judge. And that will be a huge issue. And I don't really have a concrete suggestion in here, because the way every company measures the productivity is so different that instead of measuring the actual outcome, is perhaps the amount of content or the amount of work that they put together. And perhaps like I said at the beginning, it's a good time for people to think and to come up with ideas that say they can implement in the short term and also in the middle to the long term. And it's a good time to think. It's a good time to innovate, and instead of doing actual production. So say I would just take marketing and as an example, because you simply cannot measure the output. And in terms of the leadership qualities over the next 6 months, I think it always goes back to the adaptability and your ability to motivate your employees, especially make sure that they are aligned with the management, that they don't lose focus, they don't lose they see there's a light, there's light in the tunnel, and make sure you keep communicating with your employees that, hey, we're nearly there. We are starting to get progress. We're starting to get business. We're starting to move again. You really have to make sure that you communicate that well with your employees, that when they see hope, they will keep working. They will keep the motivation of work every day, because they know that they are up to something. They are working towards a goal. But if you just tell them, hey, keep working, they're not going to do so, because they don't know why are they working or what they are working for, right? So communication would be a big issue, that just make sure everyone stays on the same page and everyone understands that there is a goal for everyone to achieve.
Clement, very, very interesting. And the question is, how are companies handling the psychosocial risk and the burnout syndrome?
Okay. I think in general, in the Gemini countries in China, I don't see people, there's a huge psychological effect.
No hay un efecto significativo.
I think there's the main reason behind that is the culture is so different.
La razón primordial
in China
es algo cultural.
So I don't think there is a huge psychological impact on people, actually. Yeah. So I may not be the best candidate to answer that question, because there isn't really an issue in this region of the world. But yeah. So I'm afraid I'm not the best person to answer that question, because in here the funny thing is we love to go on vacations. We love to go on vacation because work has been so intense in our workforce. So people actually don't mind to take a 2 months, 3 months gap, and they were quite enjoying working from home, or simply doesn't have anything to do for a given amount of time. But yeah, it might be an issue, but I don't think there's a major impact at the moment. No.
Okay. And now, Clement, now the final question.
Yeah.
There is an important question here. Luis Fernando Castro says, yeah, how important is going to be the experience for companies if the new normal is not based on what managers learned in the past in former jobs? Now the learning is the new experiences. How important is the experience now in companies? Well,
right. It depends on the industry, I would say. Yeah, so some industries that you really have to innovate and to evolve instead of using previous experience because it doesn't bring you anywhere if experience is the only thing that you rely on, because the world is changing, the world is evolving as always. So especially for the traditional industry, say, for example, manufacturing, say, for example, logistics, we cannot just, based on our previous experience that we can recover from that. Instead, we really have to come up with new ideas, more flexible, more customer or company customers oriented driven ways of offering our services or products. So I think a good way is really to understand what's happened in the rest of the world and talk to different experts within that industry in other places in the world, that how are people reacting and whether that's those measures suit your company in your region. And yeah, so don't just rely on past experience. I don't think that's the best way. I mean, we are in a world that changes every second nowadays, and there's so much innovation in the last 10 years than compared to, say, the last 100 years or so. So it really depends on how well we can adapt to the situation. Is that it will define your success of the company.
You have been very nice, very generous with us with your time. And
No worries.
I know that you have prepared this conference. It has been very important for us to understand how you see the things in your marketplace. Very interesting experience before hours. And I see that, maybe that message that you gave us about resiliency and adaptability and innovation and diversification, that will be very important to take this into account and to continue thinking about these changes and maybe this new normal that we'll have in human resources management. Thank you to all of you, dear audience. You are almost all of you here despite the time. We apologize because of the technical problems, but I think that anyway, we had a great speech from Clement. Clement, thank you very much. Hope to see you soon, somewhere in this globe. Thank you very much, and be very successful with all these opportunities that the crisis is bringing to all of us. Thank you very much, and have a very nice day.
Good luck. And so good luck. And my last word will be keep innovating, keep your mind fresh, and we will recover. So don't lose hope, and we will be an even better world soon.
Great. Thank you very much. Wonderful final words. Thank you, Clement, and we'll see you soon, and bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for all the participation of everybody. Okay, everybody is saying thank you very much. Goodbye. Very nice speech. Everybody, thank you for your single word in Spanish.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay, wonderful. You have a good potential. Okay, bye, Clement. Be happy. Thank you very much again.
Goodbye. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. You too. Muchas gracias por su asistencia. Hasta entonces. Hasta pronto.